Okay, hi everybody. I am here with Gabby Barreto from Nutrition by Gabby. First of all, I'm Gila Glassberg, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor. And I asked Gabby to join us because she is also a dietitian and she also practices intuitive eating. So, Gabby, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Gabby. I'm also a registered dietitian and I do practice intuitive eating. I am not certified yet, but I hope to at some point become certified. And I've been a dietitian for only almost a year at this point. But I've been a personal trainer and I've been in the fitness industry and in fitness culture for about 10 years. And I took a dive into nutrition because I wanted to be able to help people with nutrition and fitness. And then I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in like this crazy weight loss world that I don't want to be in, but I don't know what else to do. What do I do? And then I discovered intuitive eating because I was like, I don't really want to help people lose weight. This is not what I want to do. And when I was in grad school, I discovered intuitive eating and read the book and learned more about it and really kind of got sold on this. I don't like to say sold, but really like developed this lifestyle where I was like, wow, like I would have never thought that way if I didn't read that book. And it's such an amazing lifestyle to really live.
So, how'd you stumble upon it?
Probably Instagram, to be honest.
Really?
I don't really, it's funny because I think about it myself. I'm like, when did I stumble upon this? And it must have been, it either was Instagram or my best friend is, she's a therapist and she works with, I believe it was her actually. She introduced me to Haze and I was like, what's Haze? What is this? What do you mean? We're being taught all these things in school. Like, how can health at every size exist? And when I was in grad school, she introduced me to health at every size. And I believe now that I'm thinking about it, she introduced me to intuitive eating, and I kind of like had found couple of people on Instagram that were big into intuitive eating and really learned a lot from them. And then I was like, okay, you really don't learn from Instagram. Why don't you go do some research? And I found the book, I read the book, I got the workbook, I did a lot of the workbook and myself. And I like to use a lot of her tools with clients and stuff, but it was all kind of like self-taught. And it was really hard kind of learning that and then being in school to become a dietitian at the same time, where like you're like being told this one like paradigm of nutrition and then learning something completely else, where I'm like, no, but aren't I supposed to make like a diabetic diet with all the diabetic choices and the calories? Like, that's what we were taught. And I remember in medical nutritional therapy, of course, we take like making these diets, and I'm like, who actually spends the time to count these calories? I never counted calories in my life. Like I had disordered eating and eating disorder, but even then I never really counted calories. Well, there was a brief period, but I was like, who does this? And I'm happy I found it because I was like, wow, you really don't need to do that. So I've actually been trying to do this my entire life, but never got to figure it out until I discovered it.
Wait, so did you say you had an eating disorder or disorder?
Yeah. So I would say I never really like I did do therapy. So when I was younger, I was like it's so interesting because kids are so mean. And I would look at pictures of myself now and I would never say that I even looked remotely overweight. I was never really a big kid, but I wasn't like these skinny, tiny little girls that were in my class. So I was picked on. And when I was in like 8th grade, I had lost all of this weight. I guess I went through puberty and I had lost a lot of my weight. And people would ask me, what did you do? What did you do? I was like, I didn't do anything. And all of a sudden I was very insecure and I became very, very validated for being thinner than I was. And I was like, oh, it kind of inside of me was like, oh, if I'm thin, I get attention and maybe my insecurity will go away. Well, guess what? My insecurity never went away. And between like, I would say 16 up until like 23, I like battled in and out of disordered eating, anorexia, bulimia. I would say, a lot of different habits that I have. I would just call it, label it an eating disorder, where I valued thinness more than I valued anything else in my life. And so, I kind of went through phases of kind of being disordered to being full blown eating disordered. And it was a, looking back, it was a very interesting time where I was just like, I never got anywhere. It never made me happy. It never made me more confident. And so, I realized once I got help and I was sick enough, that, oh, my self-worth isn't based on me being thin or me being small. So it was very interesting that I took that in 8th grade to be like, I lost all this weight and I got validation and I'm going to run with it and my insecurities.
Wow. There's so much to say on that specific story.
Yeah.
First of all, I do have some adolescents in my practice, and it is pretty scary to see, like whether or not it's complementing weight loss or it's insulting, like being heavier or weight gain.
Mm-hmm.
It has such an impact. And like, I don't mean to scare parents, but like, it's just, especially for somebody who's like insecure or like they don't have like such good self-worth, like any comment or anything that pokes at their insecurity could really play a major role in their health. So that's pretty scary, but also really like informative,
Right. And it's, when I have some clients with kids and they're like, what do I do? Like, do I put them on a diet? They don't, and it's like, don't do that, be the power of example for them. And, let's stop dieting ourselves. But like for me as a young kid to be ridiculed for being bigger than everyone else and then validated for losing weight, coupled with, because it's always coupled with something, right? Coupled with insecurity, low self-esteem, low self-worth, it was kind of like a recipe for it.
Right. I also heard, I don't remember where I heard this, but I think it was on I listened to like so many books and podcasts, but I think it was a therapist saying, like, let's say there's a woman who's very attractive and she gets a lot of attention for being attractive. Like, people comment on it, people talk about it a lot. So therefore she spends a lot of time on her looks, and she doesn't even realize that they've dictated to her like what is important to her, which is a really interesting perspective. Like, we have been dictated that like weight loss or the thin ideal is like the end all and be all. And then, like what you're describing, like you said, from 16 to 23, like years. And then I have clients who've been dieting for 20, 30 years. They're like, I just spent all that time, like, so fixated on something that, like, first of all, I can't attain. And second of all, why am I even trying? Like, for what?
Right. And what you said, like, I can't obtain. And people are like, well, I can obtain it. I'm like, yes, but what is that doing for you? Like you mentioned, like a thin woman, and she's like just complimented on her looks. But there's so much more to us as women. Like, if we look at ourselves as women, like, we're not just looks, right? We're something so much deeper than that, and we can bring so much more to the world. And so like you said, like, I always try to empower women to like write down things. What are you outside of your body? Like, who are you as a person? Because when we look at people, we could be the most beautiful, culturally ideal look on the outside, but who are we on the inside? I think that's what makes people beautiful, for sure.
Right. So, I don't mean to challenge you, but like, because like we're both dietitians and we're both doing intuitive eating, I'm sure you get like this question all the time, like, wait, how could that be? Like fat is bad, or obesity, we know obesity is bad, or like do you get those types of questions all the time?
Yes. And I'll tell you something very interesting. When I walked into clinical, I was very shocked because I was told, it's so interesting when you learn these are the statistics, and it's, people with a BMI of blah, blah, blah that are more likely to get XYZ. And then I walk into the hospital and I'm like, all these thin people, like all these smaller people have all these things. And I'm just like, where are all the people with those BMIs you've been telling me about? Like, where are they? And it was so interesting that like I saw so many people of all different sizes have all different complications.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, really, as I was like learning about intuitive eating, as I was learning about that, and then also seeing, it was such a cool experience in that I got to see that, wow, it's really not a size determines your health. And I had a client once before, and she was like, my BMI is this, but my doctor says that I'm, as healthy as a 30-something-year-old woman can be. She's like, but she was so confused. She's like, but my BMI is this, and my weight is this. And I'm like, so what's your concern? You eat healthy, you exercise, you like live a healthy lifestyle, you have a good stress, management and things like that. You have a healthy family, you have a great job. What else is there to add to what else is this going to do for you? And it was kind of like challenging her, like, oh, like, what is this going to do for me? And it's very interesting to see the research and then going into that hospital or working with people all different sizes and being like, you're like looking at them clinically. So I'm looking at their labs or I'm looking at things like that. I'm like, oh, you're healthy. Like your labs are great. Like there's nothing wrong with your health. So then we look at like health at every size. It's just very interesting when you look at what some of the research says, right? Where some of the research says like this BMI means, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, heart attack by age 50 or whatever. It's just very interesting to see the complete opposite of that research.
Yeah, I guess you're saying like even like anecdotally, just what you see in your clinical job. I remember when I was a student, like I was doing my clinical rotation in a nursing home, and my preceptor, so that's the person who's like in charge of me, she said that for nursing home patients, we want their BMI to be between 25 and 30, which is actually quote unquote the overweight category. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's like the most unhealthy, like I never heard of intuitive eating when I was a student. So I was like shocked. And I remember her saying like, if their BMI is 21, which is like what people would like, love to be, like that's unhealthy for like the geriatric population. And I was like so confused and now even like, I always think about that. And I always tell that to my clients, like we're really unfortunately misinformed. Like like the BMI doesn't really like, it's so confusing and it doesn't really like say much about our health. And I hear this a lot to clients also, like we love to hold on to a number, like it makes us feel like safe or it gives us some sort of like data point. So I think that's why so many people are so obsessed with the BMI or so obsessed with the weight as a measure of health. But like you're saying, you're seeing in your own clinical experience, like that it's not true what we've been bombarded with, that like fat equals unhealthy. Yeah.
And it's so not true. It's just so not true. And then, we look at like just the way people's bodies are built, like genetically, like they're, a lot of us are predispositioned to have a certain body type. Right. And so who are we to say that because this is your heritage or your cultural background or the way, your lineage has been all their life that it's now wrong for you to be that way. And it's just so interesting because we were drilled in our head in school that like being fat is bad, being overweight is bad, having this, I also did exercise physiology, and this is interesting because they made us do the fat calibers, right? I own one. I own a fat caliber, right? The pinch, the skin fold, and like I remember standing and I was like, this is so awkward. Everyone's in a classroom with no shirt on. We're grabbing each other. I'm like, this is so weird. And actually a girl in my class, I didn't even realize at the time, she practiced HAES and intuitive eating throughout grad school. And she never showed up that day. And so I didn't find out until maybe about like a couple of months ago that she was just like, she said like when she knew that was happening, she didn't want to be there because she knew that was like very against, like just her own principles that like, I don't want to be watching people grab other people's adipose tissue. Like we need fat, like, and it's just like the grabbing and the pinching. It was just it's just so bizarre. It really is.
That is so crazy. I'm sure there was also a lot of like fat shaming or like some people feeling really uncomfortable.
It was very uncomfortable for me. And I don't like when people compliment my body and at all in any kind of way, just because of my past or whatever. So I a lot of times kindly say it, but it was very, very awkward because there was a lot of like self-shaming and like a lot of like, okay, we know you're thin. You don't need to self-shame yourself, like the fishing for compliment kind of stuff. And there was like, it was very, very awkward. Like just being there and like everyone girls in a bra and then guys no shirts on, and it was just very like so uncomfortable. I was like, when is this class going to be over? Can I put my shirt on yet? Like, why did I even take my shirt off? I didn't have to, but I felt this pressure that I needed to do this. But there was like a lot of like self-shaming, just to like, people have to like have some sort of answer to why their body isn't like perfect. I'm a nutrition student. I'm an exercise physiology student. Shouldn't I have like abs? Shouldn't I have this kind of body? Shouldn't I have that kind of body? And I talk all the time, like there really is no set body type for what you do. Right. So, but we've made it that way. Like I always say, fitness has its own culture to kind of like idolize a certain body type.
Right. So you probably see it like on both fronts, because like the nutrition background, but also the exercise background, like, yeah, like I know a lot of, like I go to Club Central, that's the gym I go to, but I don't feel like embarrassed. I don't know, a lot of people say like they don't want to do the classes, but I find that there are different women in different sizes, and even the instructors are in smaller bodies or larger bodies. But a lot of my clients or like people who I speak to say that like they feel shamed, or maybe all the mirrors, or they just are so embarrassed to even to be an instructor, like if they're not in the perfect body, perfect quote unquote. So like, does that happen a lot with your clients who you do like exercise with?
So like, it's very interesting because, you know, there's two sides to it. Some people are like, I want an instructor with a body that I want, or something like that. And there's other people that will feel comfortable being like, oh, you look like me, so that's comfortable to me, right? Unfortunately, where I am, people just, you know, they want like that ideal. And listen, I know that I have a more ideal body, and I always tell people like I never sought out to achieve this. Like I love lifting weights. I love lifting heavy weights. That's what builds my confidence. That's what makes me feel good. If I get if my body changes because of it, great. But I never went into powerlifting to change my body. I went into powerlifting and kettlebell stuff because I loved it. Versus like I used to run like a lunatic to change my body. But it's very interesting because where I am, the mirrors, I would say, if I were to open my own gym, I would open a gym with no mirrors. And I would have a gym where nobody could look at themselves for two reasons. So we're not just staring at ourselves the entire time and picking ourselves apart, you know, and staring at our body, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. And like, I will even find myself looking in the mirror and then I'm like, nope, focus on what you're doing. But also so people can just like really just become more in tune with their body, like really like understand like, okay, this is what this is supposed to feel like in this movement. And I kind of look at that as like, kind of like in a way, like being more intuitive with your exercise, more mind-body connection, and really understanding your own body, because there's like a physical part to it too, which I really like to kind of get people to understand. So when I cue things, I'm like, feel this, feel that, versus like feel the burn and sweat and jump and burn calories and just sweat. But, you know, I do see that, you know, a lot of people will say to me, like, I like your classes because of your body. And I'm just like, I shrink a little inside, and I like want to, like, I just don't, it makes me feel very uncomfortable. But that's just something that I need to work on for myself.
No, it's actually really interesting. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think that that's a really important point for those who are living in a smaller body, that I think that when like somebody in an ideal body size, or the or like society's ideal body. When we're complimented on our body, let's say you're giving this excellent class and then somebody like minimizes it to just your body, that's probably also feels very like empty. Like, I worked so hard to give you this class and like all you noticed was like my body.
Exactly. And that's kind of why I love these conversations. And I really want to talk a lot more, people like you and in the nutrition and fitness industry. So we're more than just a body. Like I went to school for this. I studied so hard for this. And then I love what you said, like you minimized me to my body. Like, no, I worked so hard to perfect my craft. It's not about my body. It's about me being able to deliver that to you. But I get it all the time. And it's just like, it makes me makes me uncomfortable because I don't like being complimented on my body. And then, like you said, like, it's just like, it's like a punch to the stomach. Like, no, you missed the point here. But we live in a society, and I understand that. So I don't blame people or get mad or upset with them. But it's more like what we're doing, like educating people that, we're more than our bodies and we deliver so much more than what our physical appearance does deliver.
Yeah, that's why like I see a lot of posts like this on Instagram, like like I forget what it is, but like you're like the least important thing about you is like the way you look, or like that's the least like interesting thing or something like that. But like what was I going to say on this? It was so interesting. I've seen people talk about this a lot. I don't know, my it will come back to me. But I also wanted to say, I have so many things to say about this. But first of all, the mirror thing, that's really interesting because like in a practical way, like we do all look in the mirror when we're like doing an exercise class. But I do also think there is probably a lot of like, shaming ourselves, looking at the instructor. And I was also this popped into my head, that people, like what you were saying before about like having like low self-esteem or insecurity. So you also probably like struggled with like intrusive thoughts or like negative thoughts about yourself. So when you're looking in the mirror at yourself and you also struggle with negative thoughts, it's almost like natural that your mind would take you to the one thing that you're looking at. You're not like thinking about like, I don't know, how you did in school or how you did at work, but you're literally staring yourself in the mirror. And you struggle with like negative thoughts. So like, of course your body's going to like pick on you.
Yeah.
So that's probably really like, it makes sense why that happens. And like, I could totally see how like going to a class without mirrors would also like really take away that focus and just focus on like how my body feels and like looking at the instructor, trying to like, or like you said, like cueing your body. Like I could see how that could really get you in like the motion of the exercise without like, how do I look?
Right. Or like you mentioned, like looking in the mirror, like I'm not looking in the mirror to see my form, which some people are. And I know there are people who will turn, and I see them, they'll turn to the side and they'll just make sure that they're doing it right, like not to check themselves out. But it's very interesting. And like, I've heard from people, like, they'll send me things on Instagram and they'll be like, look at her abs, like, look at her this, look at her that. And I'm just like, no, but that girl is like a really good instructor and she really knows her stuff and she moves so well. Like, let's not focus on her abs or her hair or her. I'm like, listen, I love hair. I love nails. I love makeup. Like, I love all that stuff, but let's not focus on that. Like, let's focus on, she's a really good instructor. She knows her craft. She knows this, she knows that. And she just happens to have great abs. Like, it's really sad. And I really love these conversations and that we can hopefully, plant some seeds and change some people's perspectives that, as a nutritionist, as a fitness instructor, as someone who, gives health, like we're more than what we look like,
right?
More than, our appearance.
Yes. And okay, I remember what I was going to say on that exact topic. So the more that we compliment people's bodies, the more that we like only focus on the external. So like, first of all, like I see a lot of posts saying like, what else can you compliment someone on, like, or what else nice can you say to someone? Like, it's so good to see you. Like, I love the paper that you wrote, or like, I really miss you, as opposed to like, did you lose weight? Like, did you like, I love your, like, not that it's bad to compliment someone's body. I don't think we need to take any of this stuff to like an extreme. But I
Yeah.
do think that the more we focus on the way people look and complimenting their externals, the more we perpetuate the problem a little bit. Like, can we focus on like deeper things? And that's why like one of the principles of intuitive eating is respect your body. And I'll ask my clients, like, can you make a list of things that you love about yourself that have nothing to do with the way that you look? Because like your mind will go to that familiar place of berating yourself or thinking about negative things and maybe negative things about your body. So therefore you need to like plan your attack. Like you need to come up with the other things that you do love
Right.
about yourself.
Yeah. It's like I always say, like, we've been brainwashed and now we need to have another brainwashing of,
Yeah.
you know, positivity and like looking at ourselves. Cause like dieting and diet culture, like it's ingrained in there. And, you know, I have to find myself sometimes I have to, you know, someone asked me the other day, like, well, what do you say if someone loses weight? And what do you, you know, do you just not mention it? Do you just not comment? And it's very interesting because I sometimes have to like hold myself back and like, okay, like this person may have, you know, just started exercising and they may be really proud of their weight loss and maybe it was really healthy and maybe it was, you know, something like that. But at times I really need to hold my health back because it can also be the complete opposite where they've really struggled, they're miserable, they made themselves, you know, almost sick in the process of losing weight. So we don't know, you know, is it coming from a good place? And also people can lose weight for other reasons that like we know as dietitians, like especially working in a nursing home, right?
Oh my
Or,
God.
you know, just
Yeah.
clinically, like we know people can be sick and lose weight. Like I have friends who have been sick and lost a lot of weight, came into the gym, and what did everyone do when they came back?
Mhm.
They complimented her weight loss and she was devastated because she was gone for a while and it wasn't like, hey, nice to see you, welcome back. It was, oh my God, you lost so much weight. And it was because she was sick. She wasn't here because she was sick and that's why she lost weight. So I also think we need to be mindful of that when we're complimenting people's bodies, we're complimenting weight loss. And like you said, we don't have to take it to extreme and never give a physical compliment, but also understand that weight loss isn't always a healthy thing. It's not always done safely. It's not only always done in a way where people are, you know, conscious about it, you know, or, you know, healthy about their approach. So we do have to be mindful of that too.
Oh, for sure. I always say that like my job in the nursing home is to help people not lose weight because
It is.
yeah, and they're like, what? That isn't that like dietitians? They put people on diets, you know? I mean, yeah, we do that too, but like, um, yeah, it's so scary to see like when we have a significant weight loss in a nursing home, there's always something bad going on, like some form of cancer or a new diagnosis of something. The medication maybe messed with their appetite or it's just not
Yeah.
good. So like, yes, I know that there's like this obsession with weight loss, but like you said before, like sometimes it could be somebody has cancer, somebody has an eating disorder, somebody
Yeah.
literally has it's taken over their life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen like, you know, I've seen people complimenting that kind of weight loss and, you know, it's hard to watch because I know when you know someone's struggling and you know someone is really, really, you know, having a hard time with it. So I always have to be mindful of that's not the first thing I'm going to compliment someone on. And, or, you know, first thing I'm going to do is, you know, make a comment about it because I'm also like, I also do struggle with like, I've caught myself in the past like 6 months trying to like back off the comments. Like right now, like I feel like recently I've really noticed like, wow, I don't do that anymore. I'm not like, you know, I don't do that anymore, but working in this culture and working in this environment, you hear it from all sides. So it's almost like it would be unnatural if I never threw that out. Like it would be completely unnatural if I did, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be unnatural in this environment. And, you know, I have so many other ways to compliment people, you know, with what I do. I have so many, you know, whether in fitness or nutrition, there's so many ways to compliment people that aren't like physical.
Right.
right? Like you work so hard. I see you working so hard. But that was something, because someone had asked me, a trainer had asked me, like, well, do you compliment someone's weight loss? Like, they've worked so hard. I'm like, well, you can also say, like, I've really seen you step it up in the gym. Like, I'm really proud of you for that.
Right.
And instead of, I'm proud of you for losing 20 pounds, or something like that. So that's another way to kind of look at it too.
Right. Like I did an interview with Evelyn Tribole, one of the authors of Intuitive Eating,
Yeah.
and she said this, and she says this all the time, but I love it. Weight is not a behavior. So like, why don't we focus on like healthy behaviors? Yeah. Like if you're exercising more, awesome. Like if you're trying to eat healthier, great. But like sometimes you will lose weight and sometimes you will gain weight and sometimes you'll stay the same. And
Yeah.
like you did nothing, to cause that. So like just
Right.
focusing on the things that we actually have control over,
Yeah. And it's so interesting. You said, like, weight's not a behavior, because, when I was in school, we talked so much about behavior change, behavior change, behavior change. And that's what we learned, really, like the way to change someone's habits and develop healthier eating habits, healthier, more mindful eating habits and things like that, was through behavior change and changing their behaviors versus changing their weight, right?
Right.
That's not always the way to, a healthier lifestyle. And I certainly learned that myself, that changing my weight didn't make me healthier. And also looking at health is not just physical. It's also, for me, is really big mentally, mentally, emotionally, more so.
Right. So they definitely all like they have to play together, like the physical, the mental, the, emotional stuff going on. Like I know for me, like it's really important to check in with my clients and see how they're doing, like with their self-care, if they're sleeping. Like it totally affect the way that they eat, their hormones.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, of course my job is to help them with the food, but like it is really, it's so true. Like I've been reading about this a lot because I'm always trying to like do research and stuff. And like, yeah, maybe there is a certain amount of people that can lose weight and can keep it off, but it's always at such a high cost. Like so much mental space, so much emotional real estate, like say, like, do you want, like, I think I said this before, but I did a training with Jessica Setnick on eating disorders, and she said someone with an eating disorder thinks about food like 80 to 100%, or she said like 110%, because they even think about food, but like the average person, even with like regular disordered eating, it's like 50%, 60%. Like that's a lot of time,
Yeah. I mean, I'll have people say that to me too. Like, what's one thing you've really, you really realize, like, I spend a lot of time thinking about food. And like you said, like taking up real estate, like, well, what else can we be doing with our lives? How else can we, be available for ourselves, other people, our families, if we're not thinking about food and wasting all of that energy? Because it's a lot of energy to have something on your mind, and for it to be food, that's if we think about it, it's kind of crazy. Like there's food everywhere. We don't need to think. We shouldn't have to think so much about it. It should just kind of be part of our nature. Back in the day, maybe people needed to be more concerned about food when there was that's kind of why we think about food a lot. Because when there was a famine, their constant concern was trying to find food.
Right.
And so that's why they think about it, So when we restrict, it's only natural to think about food. It really is.
Right. This is actually really interesting.
Yeah.
So I heard about intuitive eating after I went to school and my internship and my master's in nutrition. When I was already working in the field for like maybe 1 or 2 years, and I knew that I needed more. I knew that there was something missing in my education. I just knew it. And I had suffered with disordered eating also in high school. And I thought at this point in my life that like, I didn't really restrict. Like I was definitely one of those people that was like, it's not a diet, it's a healthy lifestyle. But there was definitely like, for sure, I was like shaming people for the way they were eating, or I was very strict with my daughter with the way she was eating. And I guess I was really strict with myself, and I didn't realize until I read Intuitive Eating. And at that time, before I read Intuitive Eating, I was a major foodie. Like I'm still a major foodie, but I felt like every night before I was going to sleep, I would think about, what am I making for dinner? And what do I have to buy at the grocery store? And I was so into it. And like, I would take pictures of my food. And then when I started reading intuitive eating and I really started to implement it, I was like, oh my God, food's kind of boring. Like, this is my profession. Like, I built my profession on this, like, I guess this order. And like, don't worry, I still love food. Like, I'm still a major foodie, but like, it was a really big, like, wake up call for me. Like, oh my God, how much time am I really
Yeah.
like, thinking about food?
It's so interesting you talked about that, because I used to be like obsessed with the grocery store. Like I'm like obsessed with grocery shopping. And now I'm just like, I used to be so like obsessed with cooking and cooking for other people. That it was such, it's so interesting when I look back, I'm like, that is such a telltale sign of disordered eating, that like you're obsessed with like cooking and feeding people. And for me at least. And you know, there's certainly a healthy, you know, part of people like feeding people, but this was not really,
Right.
and like baking for people. But
Mm-hmm.
I realized recently, like over the past year, I'm just like my food, like like you said, I still love food. I am still a little bit of a foodie, but like my attention to food is so much less. Like I still enjoy good food and things like that. Like I love cooking, but it is like completely died down. Like not to this point where like I'm obsessed with these like crazy meals and cooking all this food. And like you said, like thinking about what am I going to cook tomorrow and all that. Like that obsession is like so died down. It's like not even an obsession. It's just more like, okay, I need food that I'm going to like and that's going to satisfy me, and what that's simple and not exhausting and not going to like drive me nuts. So it's just so interesting, that connection of like that obsession with food that's kind of like normalized. Like if you go on Instagram, it's like
Yep.
it's so normalized to be like obsessed with food and like these crazy pictures and all this stuff. And like I thought I needed to do that for so
Yeah.
long. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm like, I hate this. Like I'll do it once in a while. Like I have a post that I made, but like these elaborate crazy things, I'm like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. Like I just want to make a simple recipe and like eat it and go to bed or something like that, but not to the point where like it consumes like a large part of my life.
Yeah, I think that that's actually, I think I wrote about this or maybe I read it somewhere, but like I think that that's maybe why there's such an obsession with food, because there's also such an obsession with dieting. So there's like on the one side of the coin, this obsession with restricting, and then on the other side is like this obsession with like foodie and perfect food and cooking shows and chef cooks and I mean celebrity chefs, and like it's huge. It's like a huge industry now, and I think that there's a lot of that is also because of diet culture.
100%. It's so interesting that dichotomy of like this obsession with diet and restricting, and then this like obsession with like this huge food culture too. It's just, it's very interesting. And like I was caught up in it. Like I still have all these cookbooks which are great. I barely open them anymore. I also just cook for one other, you know, my fiance and I. It's not very big, but you know, it's so much nicer to just like live more simply with food and not have to be so crazy, you know, about it.
Yeah. So I always say like my like I guess my tagline or my thing is that like I help women heal their relationship with food to ultimately heal their relationship with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is like a really powerful point because it gives women so much like freedom and openness and time for themselves and time for their family. And when you do have this obsession with food or this obsession with like I know people who struggle with eating disorders are very obsessed with their food being perfect because like that's the only meal they're going to eat. Or I'm sure you've heard of that, like, you know, dieters where they're like they're crazy about their meals because that's like
Yeah.
that's their only allotted meal or their only allotted time.
And they talk
And
about it a lot.
we talk about it a lot. It's like they're thinking about it a lot. They're looking up the recipe. I mean, I was there, you know, I totally get it. I'm not judging
Yeah.
them. But like to give someone that freedom of time and headspace, like
Right.
you could start a career. Like you could,
Yeah.
what are your interests? Like maybe food's not your only interest. Like maybe you actually like have other interests. Like that's really powerful.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with exercise, because I used to be so that way where like I have to get my workout in. Like I would like it's also the same exact thing. Like it consumes so much of my time. Like, when am I going to work out? Like, I have to work out almost every day. And like, now I'm just like, I'm dying for a day off from like teaching all these classes. I'm just like, I want a week, I want a month off from exercise right now. Like, and I totally would be happy with that. But it used to be the same thing with exercise, like this obsession where like, it would be 9 o'clock at night and I would want to go to bed, but I had not worked out. So I had to go for it was so crazy. And like you said, like you can build a career, like you can go back to school, you can like find things that you're interested in, you can build hobbies, like you can learn new things. Like when you stop giving that all that energy and time, like you look back and it's like, oh, all that time, like I wish I could have it back. But at the same time, I wouldn't be where, we probably wouldn't be where we are if we didn't go through that. And we wouldn't be able to do work like this if we didn't go through that, which is something, I'm so grateful that we're able to do.
Right. Right. That is a really good point. Right. No time is like wasted, or it's a learning process. And it's nobody's fault. Like it's really nobody's fault to be like so ingrained in diet culture, because that's the world that we live in. But I do want to go back to when you said that you had like first started getting complimented about your weight loss and the self-worth and everything like that. I do want like our listeners to understand that weight loss and this obsession with exercising or eating perfectly, quote unquote, is usually an underlying, something else is going on much, much deeper. And we think because we're told through the media or through everyone that like, weight loss is the way to go. You'll get more confidence if you lose weight. You'll be happier if you lose weight. So like, I really encourage people to figure it out. Like, what is it that you're missing in your life? Like, maybe it's not weight, maybe it's something way bigger,
Yeah, for sure. Right. And like a big part of this journey, like you mentioned before, was like improving your relationship with food and your body. Yes. But it was really for me about like improving my relationship with myself and really like learning so much more about me and realizing like, wow, is it really the food? Is it really the body, or is it something else that I'm missing in my life? Like what is it? It's very interesting. And for me, it was like, wow, I had no spiritual life. Like I was raised Catholic and I was like religious, but like I really didn't have like a spiritual life in me. And so that was like a big thing in meditation and that kind of stuff has really been like a huge, thing for me. Because it really wasn't like looking back, like when I had that compliment and that low self-esteem and that low self-worth, it really was never about the food or the body. It was really about like that low self-esteem and where can I find my self-esteem? Like, oh, if I'm smaller, yes, I can. If I'm, fitter, if I'm this, if I'm that, yes, I can. And it just snowballs into this obsession that, like you said, no wasted time. Like it was not a waste of time. It was like, whatever I was meant to go through to be where I am today, which is, I'm happy where I am today, even though like, I don't know if you ever read Christy Harrison's book.
Yeah, it did.
But it's so funny. She always says, your time and your money, and it's like, well, I'm in the profession that I'm in because I was like, she always says it, like I'm in the profession I am because I was obsessed with food and exercise, and that's, and I almost left this, working in fitness. I did leave it for like 2 years, and I thought I would never go back because it was just like, it was too much for me. But I ended up where I work now. I ended up getting a call from there and I was like, okay, I'll try this again. And here I am 3 years later and I'm still doing it. And I'm probably, in a much better place than if I would have tried to keep doing it and burnt myself into the ground. So like, thank God I was able to come back and do what I love to do and just do it with a much healthier mentality than, I was, trying to go for a run at 9 o'clock at night, being completely burnt out. So.
Well, we definitely need people like you in the profession,
Yeah.
and especially with this, like, body positivity and all your knowledge and, your nutrition knowledge and your exercise knowledge, but with like the health at every size and intuitive eating, like you're doing awesome work. And thank you for joining us.
You, for sure.
Do you want to add anything, or you want the listeners to know anything else?
That's like putting me on the spot.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Not much. I just, this process is not, it's like we get sold with diets that it's a I just heard on the radio because I listened to 1010 Wins, like my mom, she taught me well, but I was listening to 1010 Wins because I always do. And they had an advertisement, lose 20 pounds in 20 to 40 days safely and effectively. And, those messages are still out there, and it gives you like this time frame, right? And I'm always like, even when I was selling like weight loss, I was like, I can't guarantee anyone a time frame. Like I can't do that, but it gives you this like short, quick time frame. But what we do in this kind of work and this kind of, intuitive eating, really, really, like, I hate to even use the word lifestyle, but like this way of life more so, or this way of approaching ourselves is something that takes time, and it's a journey. And it's so interesting because I know I'm going to look back at today and in a couple of years and be like, wow, I grew even more. Like I grew even more, and I realized so much more that I didn't know then, because I can look back at a year ago and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was still doing that a year ago. Or I can't believe I thought that way a year ago. And here I am today. And it's just like it's just constantly growing. And that's really what we want to do. We just want to be constantly growing. Like, we grow with age, we get more wisdom, we get more knowledge, not only about our work, but about ourselves. And so as we grow, and as we grow into our, intuitive eating lifestyle, things are going to change. And so in diets, we're told like, oh, in 20 days, you lose this much weight. But with intuitive eating, it's just like, wow, you get to really continuously grow. It's just like continuously grow on that path and learn more wisdom about yourselves, and, look back and be like, wow, look how far I've come. And there's so much more to grow from here.
Right. Like you were saying before, that like you're surrounded by diet culture because you work in fitness and nutrition. And sometimes you do have a thought that pops up into your head to compliment someone with weight loss. And I think that's a really important thing to say, because I know so many people reach out to me and they're like, I still like I'm stuck in diet culture. I'm still whatever. Or people will say that to me like a few sessions in. I'm like, wait, you've been in diet culture for 50 years and you've been working with me for 2 weeks. Like, yeah, you're still going to struggle with that. And like, and also I wanted to say that I always say this, but like I remember, I don't remember what it was, but I remember like maybe when I did the training with Evelyn Tripoli, and I remember her maybe mentioning something about weight or something like that. And I remember asking a mentor of mine, and she was like, like they've changed a lot over the years also. Like they don't mention as a factor at all. And they're coming out with their 4th edition in June. And it's like, they put out the book in the 1990s, the first edition. And like, yeah, they've grown a lot too. And they've learned a lot too. And like, that's what I love about intuitive eating is like, it's okay if you don't know everything now. And it's okay that like, like you're still educating yourself and you're still learning, but like, get out there. Like, let's start like making change,
Right. For sure. And I like that even there, like I heard about the 4th edition. I was like, even they're changing, even they're growing, even they're learning. And it's cool because it's way better than dieting where you're just like on and off, like on and off, on and off. Like this is something that you grow into, not just, your relationship with food, but like we've talked, your relationship with yourself, which I think is the coolest part of it all.
Yeah, it's really cool. People really uncover like tons and tons and tons of layers. It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm gonna put your bio in the link, and like,
okay.
And do you want to say where we can find you?
You can find me at Nutrition by Gabby. It's with 2 B's, Nutrition by Gabby, Gabby.
On Instagram.
Growing up, people used to do it with 1 B, so I always have to make sure it's Nutrition. Or you can find me on nutritionbygabby.com as well. And I work here at Fit Studio in Cedarhurst, and hopefully we'll open up soon. If not, we're online there too teaching. So everything's virtual now.
I'll come to one of your classes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I can't wait. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.